Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have an episode that truly epitomizes the spirit of overcoming and thriving against all odds. Joining us is Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Richard's journey is a remarkable story of resilience, redemption, and a relentless pursuit of helping others rise above their challenges. From grappling with addiction and receiving 8 Article 15s during his military service to facing the daunting challenge of blindness, Richard's life is a powerful narrative of transformation. After his service, Richard not only battled personal demons, but also turned these struggles into stepping stones. He's the host of the acclaimed Vertical Momentum Resilience podcast, where he brings stories of hope and resilience to life, inspiring countless listeners to reclaim their lives from the brink of despair. Beyond the microphone, Richard's dedication extends to every facet of his life, advocating for mental health awareness and exploring innovative recovery therapies that challenge conventional norms. Today, Richard will share insights from his own life story, highlighting how embracing one's vulnerabilities can become a source of immense strength. Join us as we dive deep into a conversation about survival, resilience, and the powerful impact of giving back. So let's warmly welcome Richard Kaufman, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran whose extraordinary journey teaches us that no setback is too great to overcome and no personal transformation is out of reach. Richard, brother, thank you so much for being here, my friend. I'm so grateful to have
What's
you.
up, brother? Well, with that introduction, guys, we can go. I don't have to say anything. We're done. It's a wrap.
Man, dude, thank you so much for being here. You've got quite the incredible story. And so, as everybody knows how I like to do things on the show, let's start at the beginning. Let's start how you were raised, where you were raised, kind of what influenced you to join the military, and then we'll kind of pick it up from there, my
Okay.
man.
I got no shame in my game, like we told. And by the way, guys, he's going to be on my show next month, so I can't wait for that to happen. But yeah, I came into the world the usual way. I think that was a song written by somebody in the '70s. But my mom and dad split up when I was 3 months. Dad hauled ass. Mom was an addict, but she was a functional addict. She was a nurse, so she worked crazy shifts and worked weekends. So I was pretty much moved from babysitter to babysitter. We moved like 13 times by the time of sixth grade or whatever. Never made friends. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to make any friends. I'm going to leave anyway. So I never had relationships. Moved a lot and had my first drink at 11. Full blown alcoholic by the age of 13. Uh,
Wow.
Thrown out of high school for hitting a teacher in the head with a desk. So for me, it was in my mind, it was military or jail, and I joined the military and did both. So that's the beginning of the story. And so wherever you want to go from there, we'll go from there.
Yeah, so it sounds like you didn't have a lot of relationships growing up. Sounds like that was a little bit self-imposed because you were moving around and whatnot. Speak a little bit about what you know now about relationships and how that was probably not a great idea when you were growing up.
Well, as I realized, and I just had lunch or dinner with my best friend. Well, my wife's my best friend, but I have a guy friend. His name is Jason, and I realized that in order to be a friend, have a friend, you have to be a friend. And a lot of times that's being vulnerable and saying, "Hey, bro, I ain't feeling it today. You know, I'm mentally fucked up." And I hate the language, but we're veterans here. We can get real and raw. I had a fucked up day yesterday. I mean, yeah, I have a top podcast. My book just hit #1 bestseller, but I still deal with mental health issues. I still deal with imposter syndrome. I still deal with, you know, acting shitty towards my wife and having to make a public apology just for being an asshole. I think going back to your original question is it all comes back to vulnerability, and a lot of guys and veterans, they don't like to be vulnerable. We're all hooah hooah and hardcore, and we're actually really pussies when you get us when we're alone. So in order to have a friend, my point is, in order to have a friend, you have to be a friend.
You have to be a friend for sure, man. So you decided pretty quick, it's go to war or go to jail kind of situation, right? So how old were you when you decided this? You know, I mean, you're a full blown alcoholic at 13. I shouldn't be surprised. You know, one of my very best friends was trying weed and having sex at 11, 12 years old too, which is kind of for me way outside the norm, dude. I grew up in rural farm town Indiana, so you know, completely different upbringings. So you decided it's go to war or go to jail, and so why why the military? What branch did you end up picking, and how did that go for you early on in your career?
There was a couple things that kind of interested me. I never planned on living past the age of 20. So I figured if I joined the military, I get killed, you know, live hard, party hard, and leave a good looking corpse. So for me, it was like, okay, join the military, get paid to party if I go to war and I die. No biggie. And when I went to MEPS, my hair was down to my waist, bleach blonde like Vince Neil from Molly Crew, earrings. So they couldn't wait to shave me when I got there. And
I
when
bet. I
the
bet.
hair wouldn't grow out, so it actually became it was like red. So I'm a 17-year-old kid because I joined at 16. When I turned 17, I shipped. So I'm a 17-year-old kid from Jersey. I'm 123 pounds. I'm a wise ass with a punk mouth, and I'm a street kid. So do you think they had fun with me when I got there?
Oh, I think they had a
Yeah.
blast with you. What year was this, by the way?
1986. And I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky. And when I went, I couldn't even do a push up. So they put me in, they called the Banana Brigade back then. It was, they put you in yellow jumpsuits for like, before you can even go to basic, just to get you in shape
Oh
enough to go
man.
to basic. So, yeah, I was not very popular whatsoever until I figured out it's all a game. It's all a head game. And if I can beat the head game, then I'll win. So until I figured out it was a head game, I struggled for a long time.
So how long did it take you to figure out that head
Well,
game?
I passed the Banana Brigade, and I got to basic, and I still couldn't do push-ups, sit-ups, great, but I figured if we do PT in the morning, and then while everybody else is shining boots and all that, if I PT again, um, I'm going to be twice as good the next day. So eventually, at the end of it, I maxed out my PT. I maxed out the push-ups. I maxed out the sit-ups. I never could run. I couldn't run. I can't. I still can't run worth a shit. But I maxed out PT because I figured, all right, it's a mind game. They're not going to kill me.
Yeah.
They're not going to kill me here. So let's just play the game. And like Triple H used to said, it's time to play the game. And I figured
Man.
out the
Yeah.
military was just a mind fuck.
Well, and you know, it's almost just a mind game to find out if you can beat yourself, really, right? Like we didn't realize it at the time, but I think being older and wiser, having done quite a bit of work on ourselves internally, you can really look at that and be like, I was in competition with
Yeah.
myself.
And well, and even in my life now, other people are playing checkers. I'm playing chess. It's
Yes,
all a mind
sir.
game. Whatever it
Yep.
is, whatever you're doing in life, it's all in the mind, and then everything else follows. But if it's not in your mind, you're not going to be successful. Whatever you do, whether it's military, civilian, it's all in the mind.
Definitely. So you get through basic training in the Banana Brigade. That's so funny. I can imagine you guys running around in 1986 with yellow
Oh my god! And it was
jumpsuits
like
on
bright,
all over
bright,
Fort
and they do it
Knox.
on purpose so you want to get out of there. That's why they do it.
Right.
It's a mind fuck.
Somebody would blow their fucking gasket if you did that shit these days. They wouldn't be very happy
Yeah.
about that, but that's for another story. So you get through basic and you get to your first unit. What was your first duty station?
Fort Hood, Texas, and
That's a great one, huh?
I partied, and I'm 17 years old. I mean, I'm not even 18, and I was good looking back then. I was skinny. I was shredded after basic. I partied at every single club in Fort Hood. Everybody knew me. First month there, everybody knew me. So I was drinking and partying at 17 at Fort Hood, all over the base, forgetting that I'm in. I have a job to do. So I would get off at like 5 o'clock, get showered. I'd be at the club at 7. I'd get banged up, and I would leave the club at 3 and be at PT by 5. And I did this
Yeah.
for
So you're
2.5
taking
years.
yeah, you're taking that same behavior you had before you joined and you're just continuing to do it after you're in the army. Right? It was the
Yeah,
army, right?
and but wait a minute,
Yeah, yeah.
they're
So
paying me to party.
right. Right. You haven't figured out that this is
I mean, I'm
actually a job and you
17
have
years
to
old,
do
and I
it,
was
right?
telling somebody this the other day. I went to Oktoberfest in Germany at 17, and I'm roadieing for Joan Jett at 17 years old in Germany because she's playing Oktoberfest. I'm living,
On
yeah,
active
I'm
duty,
living the rock
nonetheless.
style
Yeah.
lifestyle.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So I imagine you had a career, a really storied career here with 8 Article 15s. That's unprecedented to me because in my day, you get to 2, you're probably
Two
gone,
field
right? Like
grades,
they're kicking you out.
two field grades,
So 2 field
two field
grades
grades.
and then the rest six company
Yeah,
grades.
I was. But what
So
saved me?
how many
But
of
what
them
saved me? And I tell everybody this: if you put me in the rear with the gear, I'm getting in trouble. But if you put me out in the field, I'm a field dog. I'm that guy. I would hop tank to tank. I would go 72, sometimes 4 days without sleep because I loved in the field, and back then it wasn't even Monster Energy, which I'm drinking now. There were other energy drinks, and I was just like, I'm living on Kodiak and energy drinks for like 4 or 5 days, but everybody wanted me on their tank because they knew, okay, Kaufman's the best driver, Kaufman's the best loader. So let's get him on a tank. He'll hop tank, the tank, the tank, the tank. So I was on the company commander, the brigade commanders. So even though I was getting in trouble, the brigade commander would be like, "Yeah, you're on restriction. How about come load for my tank?" He's the one who put me on
So it's
restriction,
like there's
but
this
I'm loading for his tank on tank table 8.
it's this element of Wild Richard's out here because he's not actively engaged in doing his job, but the Richard who does his job is highly sought after for gunneries throughout the battalion and the brigade because he's a team player and he does his job well, right? And so you've got this like conflicting dichotomy going on, right? And you don't know how to meet in the middle yet, right? So of those 8 Article 15s, how many of them were related to your drinking?
9 of them.
I figured that was going to be the answer. So all of them, which is kind of unprecedented because at least in the army I was in from 03 to 15, if you got one DUI, you get a second chance. You're going to lose some rank, right? If you did it again or it was alcohol related, there was no more tolerance. They're going to
But
kick
now,
you
okay,
out.
but
You're
now
getting
think about it.
chaptered.
Like I said, this is back in the 80s. And think about if the brigade commander, if you're on his tank and you just got him Top Gun,
Of
so
course,
he
right?
might
So there's that
he'll be
element.
like, yeah, just do 45 days restriction, 45 days extra duty, loss of rank. We'll keep him because we got tank table 6 coming up in 3 months, and that's how I survived. That's how I survived my career, just because I was. And then they figured out, all right, well, everybody is going for showers. We're going to put Kaufman on guard duty. He's going to watch the tanks so he doesn't go back in the rear and get arrested.
And
So they
party,
figured
right? Of
it out.
course. And so your career spanned what 23 years?
After I was given the 400th chance, I would have done 30, but I ended up doing 23 between National Guard and regular Army time.
So how long was your regular army time?
Well, I did 2.5 years before I got thrown out, and then after 9/11, I think we got deployed for 2 years stateside. So it was only like 4.5 years active duty time.
Okay, so most of your time was in the guard, which might explain a little bit more about the Article 15s and whatnot. So, what I'm honestly curious about, that's a lot, man. And at least my experience in the army, the guys who we just call them problem childs, right? The
That was
guys
me.
who are problem childs,
I was the ultimate
and
shitbag.
it's not meant to be.
I was the shitbag.
It's not meant to. Yeah, that's exactly what we call them, the
Yep.
shit bags. Some people are cut out for it and some people aren't. But with this many, you don't typically see somebody turn it around and then make a career out of it. So
But how
what
about
was
this?
kind of
How about getting thrown out of the military and getting back in,
Yeah,
and
honestly, I can't
almost
say
being thrown
I'm
out for a second time.
for a second time. I'm not super surprised after 9/11 that they let you back in because they let a lot of people in that they
Yeah, but
probably
this was
shouldn't
I
have.
got thrown out in '89, and I was back in 90, 91.
Oh wow, so not even. I mean, we didn't even have
So I had to
9/11
jump
going
through
on. So
hoops, literally, no, not literally, but in order to get back in. And the only reason it happened because I was looking at 5 years for grand larceny for robbing a police officer. Um, and my uncle that and my dad and my uncle that bailed me out. My dad was an Italian veteran. My uncle was like 5'4", Korean War veteran, and he was also the Army's heavy boxing champion in Korea. And when I'm getting locked up and they're about to throw me in jail, he looked in my eyes and said, I knew you never had what it takes to be a military man. And it ate at me since that moment. I didn't sleep for like 6 months. I would wake up dreaming. I'm like, I did because this guy was a fourth grade dropout, right, or fifth grade, retired as a multimillionaire. But then he's telling me, I knew you weren't man enough. And I respected him so much. I looked up to him. And when somebody tells you something like that, it just ate at me. So for 6 months, I couldn't sleep. And I had to get letters from congressmen. I had to get letters from jail, the police. I had to get letters from AA that I was going to AA meeting. I had to jump through a lot of hoops in order to be able to get in the National Guard after being thrown out. But eventually I did.
and so your dad said this to you,
And
right?
my uncle Bob said, "Yep,
Oh,
yep."
your uncle,
He said,
excuse me.
"Yep."
So your uncle says this to you, and this is somebody who you look up to as a mentor. So would you say that that was kind of the catalyst for
Well,
change
there
for
was
you?
three, and we'll talk about them as we go on. But there was three events in my life, including, almost going to jail, my suicide attempt, and then 9/11. But those three wake up calls were, some people have to be hit in the head a bunch of times, and I was that guy where I'm just too dumb, and I just did I did
You just like to learn the extra hard way.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I was that guy that was the hard head, and I still have a hard head. And I wrote a post today, and I'm like, I apologized to my wife for arguing with her yesterday over something was my fault. And I'm like, I apologize. Sometimes I'm just too dumb, and I say shit that I don't mean, but I apologize. So at least I know I got a
Yeah.
hard head.
Yeah. So you were thrown out in '89,
So
right?
88, yeah, 86, yeah, because I was in 2.5 years. So end of 88,
So
maybe
close to 80,
89
88.
is when I got thrown out.
Because I ask because I was obviously doing my research with such a prominent guest coming on and really
Well, you
wanted to
got a
respect
prominent
your
guest
time
coming on.
and
Who's
make sure I
that?
get yeah, right, you, that would be you. But I saw a short of you and I'm not sure who you're talking to, but it says you put down the bottle in 1989 and you haven't touched it since.
January 2nd, 1989. I just celebrated 35 years of no alcohol,
35 years of
no
sobriety.
drugs, nothing harder than ibuprofen 800 slammed down with a monster.
Wow, man, that's impressive, and I congratulate you for that because I know that's not easy. Having had alcohol consume me as well, not to the extent that it did you. I understand what that is and how hard that is to beat, and the intense work that you have to do on yourself to not let it control
But
your life. So I commend
listen
you
to
for
this,
that.
and like I said, I'm not bragging at all because it's all because of him. It's not because of me. I quit before I was legally able to drink. I started at 11 and quit at 20. So before I was even able to legally drink, I realized, okay, I can't do this. This is not for me. So I quit before most people could even legally drink.
And so, do you think your uncle saying that to you had a hand in you quitting drinking and getting your shit together so you could get back
Well, I
in?
was already,
Did those two things kind of happen at the
well,
same time?
because the day that I was about to be locked up was New Year's Eve 1989. The next day is when I started because the guy I robbed, which is a police officer, and I wish I knew who it was the day I'd take him out for steak and lobster. I'd give him hugs. I'd buy him a car, whatever he wants. Um, but he said, you got to get my money back in 24 hours because I gave away like I think it was like $3,000 worth of free drinks. I had $5 grand in my pocket. And he said, I want my money back in 24 hours. I don't care what you do. Well, I begged and I borrowed. No, I didn't steal. Everybody got paid back. But he said, you got to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And I had to sign in, sign out, and all that. And instead of hitting 90 meetings, I hit 300 in a row. And I haven't had a drink since that day. So, but for me, I got 35 years, but I'm one drink away. I'm one drug away from losing everything. So my mantra is I drink, I die. Next. Simple.
There you go.
Simple.
And so that's how you get through it when you're.
And if I look to my left, I have a whole refrigerator full of alcohol, wine, beer that my family and friends drink. I don't drink. That's it. I drink, I die. Okay, there it is. It's not for me.
It's just that it's that cut and dry
Because
for
I
you,
know if I
and
have one,
that's
and
great.
even when I go, like I would tell everybody, like we went out for dinner last night, and I had a Diet Coke. My wife has tasted everything that has not come out of a can since we've been together. She doesn't even make regular vanilla cookies because the vanilla extract is 40% alcohol. That's how serious and crazy I am. Like when I go to my sister's house and we have a big Italian family, I'm like, what can I eat? What can I not eat? Because you don't realize,
Yep.
people say, oh, the alcohol burned out. Yeah, well, in my mind, if I had one thing of wine, fuck it, I'm gonna drink. I'm gonna go start drinking another bottle. It's in my body.
I can totally,
You know what I mean?
I totally relate to that. I totally relate to that because my thing was sugar. Sugar is the thing for me, and I'm over the
Because it's
top
the same
about it.
thing
I
in the
look
neuron.
at the bread that
It's the
I
same.
buy.
It's the same
Yep,
neurons in the brain. Sugar, alcohol, sex, social media. It's all the same.
all the
It's
same
all the same
spot.
thing. So
Yep. Yep, but I didn't realize, the destruction sugar was causing to me. And, I'm the same way about it. My birthday's this week and, my wife wants to make me a cake and it's like, well, I better not have any sugar in it. She's like, well, that would be an awful cake. And I'm like, I can't go back to that. I can't go back to consuming so much sugar that I'm killing myself, literally killing myself.
that's
I'm
why
90 pounds
when people
overweight.
they quit drinking, they gain like 40 pounds. Because as soon as you go to AA meeting, the first thing you're doing is eating cookies, cake, drinking coffee with this much coffee, that much sugar. So that because you're just replacing one addiction for another.
Yeah, you're trading one addiction for
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm with you. So moving past, the Article 15s, you mentioned this and I want to dig more into this. So you're I assume your transition from, out because you got kicked out. How did that, like, what kind of toll did that take on you mentally?
Well, when I came home, um, I was fucked up because here I am. I'm 19 now. I just traveled the world, partying everywhere, hanging out with rock stars, Joan Jett. I'm dropping acid from Friday night to Sunday night for 2.5 years. So, and then I get thrown out, and I told my mom I got released on good good behavior. So I lied to her, and then when I get home, my dad, God bless him, he's gone 2 years now. He was a hardworking man. He came off the boat from Italy. He didn't speak the language. He bought two houses cash. He worked 6 days a week, two jobs, 6 days a week, and he'd be like, "Wait a minute, I'm getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You're not getting in till 3 o'clock in the morning." He's like, "You're out of here." And I was like, "Oh, you're an asshole." But now, as I'm a father, I got a 22-year-old, I got a 19-year-old, and I got a 12-year-old. I sit there, I'm going, I get it. I understand. So me, it was hard because he's like, you got to go. It was tough love, and for me, now the crazy thing is, I met this girl, and I worked with her father, and I was making $1,000 a week in '89 cash, and I was still living in my car and living in a crack house because I'd get paid on Friday and I would blow every single thing except for gas money every week for
By
years.
Sunday, probably, huh?
So for me, it was a hard because I'm thinking, and okay, I wasn't a real veteran, but I'm thinking, okay, 2.5 years in the military, that should get me something. And they're like, yeah, you got an under honorable condition discharge. We don't even want to see. We don't even not want to know who you are. So for me, it was really hard because I still had the attitude, and now I'm unemployed, and I mean I'm working, but I'm still living that rock star lifestyle, and it was tough, man. I mean, I'm the only guy you'll know that's ever been thrown out of a crack house for his behavior.
That's incredible. I didn't know that happened to people.
That's
I thought
me.
just if you're at a crack house, like how in the fuck are you getting thrown out of that
Because
place,
well, I
right?
figured,
But apparently you
well,
found a
because
way.
I never and I never figured this out. It's kind of like my friends will still go out. They'll be like, let's go out, let's have a glass of wine, and I'm going, fuck does that mean? What does a glass of wine mean? If I can't drink the bar empty, I'm not going to have one. So if I'm living in a crack house and we're smoking it up, I'm not going to go to bed until I smoked everybody's shit. And they're just
Yeah,
like, you
for
got to go.
sure.
You're too bad. You got to go. So I'm the only guy that you ever meet that gets thrown out of crack.
And this is all going on while you're trying, I assume, right after you get kicked out the first time, right? So you're doing all this, and then you have that come to Jesus moment when your uncle
Yeah.
talks to you, and you're like, okay, I'm going to show you. So you're trying to get back in. So did you tone the partying
Stop.
down at that point?
Stopped completely.
You stopped completely.
January 2nd, 1989. Haven't had a drink or a drug since. But the hard thing is, I'm 20 years old. I don't have any friends to hang
Yep.
out with because they're enjoying life, drinking normally. Still having parties on the weekends, like they all do. And I'm like, well, I got to stay away from people, places, and things. And it's not that they were bad because they knew how to. Okay, we'll party Friday and Saturday, but Sunday we relax, and then Monday we go to work or go to college. Me, I was just like,
Right.
okay, it's Sunday, it's football. Monday, let's party Monday morning, Tuesday morning. So I never knew when the party never stopped. I was Motley Crue before Motley Crue was Motley Crue.
Yeah, and they had that element of self control that you just didn't
Definitely.
have, right? And
Yeah.
you recognize that you're self aware enough to
Yep.
know that, so you have to separate yourself from that, and that's a tough thing to do. I can't imagine doing it. I'm 39 now, so it's a lot easier than I could ever imagine when I was 20 doing that, right? Like, because that's the thing, especially in the army. That's the thing you do with your off time. You go downtown, you drink with the boys, you try to find women or guys if that's what you're into, and it's one big party until it's time to go back to work. I remember Monday morning 8 mile runs, everybody in formation smelling like alcohol because you're sweating out the entire weekend. So it's good of you that you recognize that, so you don't squander the second opportunity when you get back into the army. So how did you end up in the guard? Would they just not let you back on active duty,
They
or
looked at
was the
my
guard
jacket. My
something that you
jacket was like that thick, and they're looking at me. They're like, yeah, I got nothing. I'm like, come on, I've done enough KP. At least let me peel potatoes. They're like, yeah, uh, no. So I'm like, how else can I get in? And then I heard something about National Guard, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but let me apply. And then they were like, well, you got to do this. You got to get handwritten. You got to get something from your congressman, from your job, from AA. And I'm like, all right. And I had to move to Pennsylvania in order to get into the Pennsylvania National Guard. But eventually, I got back in after a lot of hemming and hawing and getting a lot of paperwork signed and documented and waiver after waiver after waiver.
talk about the challenge of actually getting all that stuff together, because back then there was no internet. You couldn't just email somebody. So you're already facing a time challenge, right? Like, this is going to take a while, because I imagine a lot of things been done by snail mail. You're probably making a lot of phone calls and on hold for a long time, because I think that's probably right around the time answering machines are
Yeah.
coming about, right? So talk a little bit about the challenges of actually getting in, getting all this paperwork. I've had to do this to get into my last deployment to Afghanistan. Yes, I said get into it. I wanted to go, and I had to go run around and find people that would write papers and do this thing so that I could go on a deployment versus get out of a deployment. And it's challenging. I can't imagine having to have done it, before we were as connected as we are
Well,
now.
what I showed up every day because I think I moved to East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. My son's going to ESU right now. Go Warriors! Woo! But it was like 2 miles away from the recruiting station to my house, so I would walk 2 miles, get there in the morning before I went to work, bug the guys, and then I would walk back home, and then I'd show up again the next morning and be like, "All right, I'm not going anywhere." So they're like, "Okay, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. It's going to take time." And I'm like, "All right, I'll see you tomorrow morning." And I just kept
Yeah,
showing up.
man. And it's a testament to, because that's exactly how I got into my Afghanistan deployment. I went to my first sergeant. I said, "First sergeant, I'm going on this deployment with you." He's like, "Well, you're non-deployable. I can't take you." I was like, "Well, how do I make myself deployable?" And he's like, "Well, if you can figure that out, I'll give you till the end of the week and I'll take you. But I'm going to need something in writing from someone with some power." And it's like, okay, well, I'll just go to this one place and I'll just sit here all day until I talk to the person in charge. And that's what I did until the end of the week. I got what I needed. I handed it to my first sergeant, and he's true to his word. He took me with him. So I think that's an excellent testament to just showing up every day. And it's important because it got you into a better position in life, right? Like, it got you sober, it got you back into the Army, and albeit the National Guard. But
But now also,
why did you?
I got a lot of Article 15s in the National Guard. So the only difference was um, I wasn't drinking. I was just an asshole. And that's the difference. I tell everybody, well, what's the difference between being dry and being sober? And I'm like, okay, if you're dry, you're just an asshole that doesn't drink. If you're sober,
Mhm.
you try not to be an asshole and you don't drink. So I was
Right.
still 21 years old. I just didn't drink, but I was still the partier. I was still the wild child. I just didn't drink. So I was just a total asshole the whole time until the morning of September 11th, 2001. For that whole time, I was in from 90 whatever 90 to 2001. I was just a total asshole. I was like,
So you
I was
got a
the ultimate
decade.
asshole.
Would you consider yourself still a shitbag at that
Oh
point?
my god, I was the ultimate shitbag. I mean, if there was a if I could got pinned, I'd be like there would be like a big S, like instead of Superman, it'd be like shitbag. Um, but like I said, what saved me again? All right, Sarge, what you need? You need me to clean 50 weapons this weekend? Give me some Kodiak. Give me some energy drinks. Consider it done. So that's what saved me. It
Right.
was being a field dog. And if you ask me to do something, if you ask me to build a bridge, don't give me the plans. I'll build the bridge and we'll talk about the plans later. That's the kind of guy that I
Well, and
was.
you're still well, and you're even still like that to this day, as evidenced by just the get to know you call to invite you to be a guest on my show. We had never met before, and before I could even finish explaining what the show was about, you're like, "Yes, on one condition: you have to be on my podcast." Right? Like, that's just very indicative of the type of person that you are, right? And so you're spending a decade in the guard, just doing the same old thing that you're doing, and 9/11 happens. And I was a sophomore in high school, so like all of this shitbaggery that you're doing is taking place as I'm coming of age and making my way to the Army. So talk to us. Why did September 11th, 2001? Why did that change? Why was that such a pivotal point? Why was that the number two thing on your list that you said was kind of an aha moment or a
Well,
wake up call?
if backtrack a little bit, if I go stand on my front porch, I'm standing in the shadows where the Twin Towers once stood. So I'm 10 minutes from Manhattan. And we knew people that were in the buildings that day. And but not only that, because I got busted the month before, and that's when they're like, I missed a move out, and we all know if you miss a move out, it's pretty much a wrap. So they're like, all right, you got to turn your shit in. I forget when drill was. It was like the weekend after 9/11 or the end, I think. And they're like, get your TA-50 together. We're throwing your ass out for a second time. And I'm like, so all my shit, as I'm watching this all unfurl on TV, this was live. There was no editing. You would hear the bodies hitting the ground. You hear all the crashing. And then when they pulled the bodies out of the Pentagon, and all my shit is to the right of the TV, all my TA-50. And I'm like, man, I just wasted 27 years of my life. And all these people in the Pentagon and the towers, they just wanted to go to work and come home. And I've wasted my whole life and all the opportunities that God has given me. And I wrote about that in my first book. I literally broke down on my couch and I said, Lord, you've given me thousands of chances. I said, give me one more chance. I don't think the military is going to keep me. I said, give me one more chance to help people that can help themselves. Let me give back. Now, at this point, I went from E4 to EIOU1 the previous weekend. So, thank God they have.
That's a good rank.
They had the little Velcro shit because it never stayed on long enough. And I called my first sergeant that day. I called him and I'm like, I need to see you and the company commander. And they're like, oh, fucking guy, what now? And I'm friends with both of them, and I'm still friends for all these years. And I went in and I talked to both of them, and I begged them. I'm like, because I was in their offices more than they were in their offices. And
that's an impressive feat.
I walked in, and my first sergeant and company commander, they looked at me. They're like, "You're not the same guy." They said, "I could see it in your eyes. You're not that guy. Something has changed. We can't put our fingers on it, but something that changed, and we're going to give you one last shot." And thank God they did. They saved my bacon. And from that moment on, I went from the worst, I went to first. I went from being busted those times to winning Soldier of the Year. In 3 years, I became a non-commissioned officer in 3 years, maxed out my PT, maxed out my correspondence courses. I reclassified 3 times in my career just to be the ultimate soldier.
What were your 3 jobs?
What's that? I'm sorry.
What were your three jobs?
19 Kilo, 19 Delta, 11 Bravo.
So you went from a tanker to a scout to the real man, the
and then
guy.
Because what happened? Let's take it back to that, because I had drill the end of the month, and I'm like, all right, my way obviously is not working. So what are the successful
That's
people
clear
doing?
At this point.
So I got there 2 hours before drill, and there's cars already there, and the ones that are already there are the first sergeants, the company commanders, the E7s, E6s, E8s, and when everybody went home, I sat out on the stoop until everybody went home, and the same successful people that got there 3 hours early stayed 3 hours late. And I was like, there it is. There it is. Success leaves clues. So I'm going to puppy around with these people. And now they're like, this is the same shitbag. So, but when I showed up, because back then, back in 89, we still spit shined our boots. Our uniforms are crisp. When I showed up to drill, I shaved my whole fucking head. I had my boots, you can look in to see your face. I had like three things of whatever that stuff is you put on to make it shine. I showed up a different
polish.
I showed up a different dude. Like, I couldn't walk. I was walking like this because everything was so tight. And they're like, this dude is not the same. And everybody, but I pissed off a lot of people because I'm in South Carolina now. I'm a Yankee. And I had a bad attitude. So I was hated. And when we got deployed in 2000, right after 9/11, they actually traded me to another unit because I was that hated. And I end up coming back as a sergeant and winning Soldier of the Year after they got rid of me.
How did that make you feel to watch yourself, not only watch yourself, but have others paying attention, right? Like you'd built this reputation as a shitbag. And yeah, I'm not saying that to, I mean, those are
Yeah,
your
that's my
words,
word.
right? You said you
Exactly.
were the
Yeah.
shittiest
Yeah.
shitbag, right? And so you had built this reputation. You've acknowledged that you've
Yeah.
built this reputation as a shitbag. And then the light bulb goes off for you and you make this dynamic shift into surrounding yourself with the people who are successful. Success leaves clues, like you said. So how did you feel internally as you were making all of these changes and going through that? Did it did it lift you up? Did it make you feel better than you had felt
Well, I
before?
felt like I had a mission. I felt like I had a purpose. Because when you hang out with people that are moving forward, they're not thinking about today. They're always thinking about what's next. Where do I going? Where am I going to be? What can I do to improve? So for me, I never felt comfortable because you have to be uncomfortable. You got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And and I realized that the people that move forward, like Tom Brady, never talks about his second Super Bowl. He always talked about I want my eighth. So
Right.
and for me, it's something I had a gentleman on my show. His name is Rich Davini. He's a Navy SEAL commander, and he wrote the book The Attributes. And he says if you succeed, celebrate for 3 minutes and then move the fuck on. If you fail,
Yep.
cry for 3 minutes, move the fuck on. And I found that most successful people, that's what they do. They're never thinking about. I mean, they're thinking about what they're doing at this moment because they know whatever you're doing now, 5 years from now, you'll be successful. But they're always thinking about the next thing. So I always thought I'm going to do
Yep.
30 years. My goal was to be a first sergeant. I mean, I know going from an EIO, you wanted to think I'm going to be first sergeant, but
I mean, but that's indicative of such a pivotal mindset shift that you had, right? From EIO one to I have what it takes to be a first sergeant, and I'm watching and I understand what that looks like. I can do this, right? Like that's huge, right? A lot of people aren't self aware enough to understand that they are capable of that.
one thing is, like I said, that weekend I'm an EIOU one, and from that moment on, I never hung out with E4s. If they weren't an E6 or an E7 or a company commander or a lieutenant colonel, I wasn't following them. I mean, I would volunteer. I literally volunteered for everything that they. If you want me to clean a shitter, it's going to be the best shitter you've ever seen. You're going to be able to, you want me to be the PP checker for the drug test? I'll go to class. Eventually, they got tired of me volunteering. They're like, Kaufman, we got this. Don't worry about it. We got this. But for me, it was like, okay, the company commander's going out with the colonel, and I'd be like, sir, would you mind if I drive? And they're like, why would you drive? I'm like, just just so I can be around you guys. And I would listen to what they're talking about. Shut my mouth and listen. So I became that guy who was like, listen, I've been in E4. You can't teach me anything that I haven't known already. They know something that I don't know. That's who I'm going to hang around with. I even do that today. I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. I want to be the dumbest guy in every room because I know what I know. But when I go speak with Richard Branson in August, I want to know what he knows. But that's why I drove. I drove the company commanders. I would take like when we were deployed, and I was at E2, I think. Every time they wanted to go out for lunch, I would take the first sergeant. I'd take the sergeant major out, and I would just listen. They didn't know what I was doing,
Mhm.
but I'm just gleaning. I'm gleaning everything from everybody. Be like, all right, I know what to do.
It's the fun part about having this podcast is because secretly I get master classes on how to get better at my craft and to build a business by having conversations and helping tell the other veterans stories, right? Like it's the benefit of putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. And I just love how you talk about it because it's so true in that, you said, if you want me to clean the shitter, I'm going to put my everything into that. And it reminds me, this weekend I was watching the Shannon Sharp podcast, Club Shay Shay, with Terry Crews, And Terry Crews was the same way. He didn't love football. He was doing football to get a paycheck. And then when football ended for him, he realized if I just put all of my energy into whatever task I'm doing, it will compound over time and I'll get to where I'm going. Because all he ever wanted to do was be an entertainer, right? Be on movies, be on TV. And he talks about everybody in his life that surrounded him was like, you're crazy, you're from Flint, Michigan, you need to come back to earth, you're not living in reality. And he let that get to his head. And now he just puts all of his energy into that one thing to move him forward. And here he is today, one of the most iconic actors that we know of, right? And that's exactly what you ended up
Yeah,
doing.
because you look at it, I'm a big Shannon Sharp guy. I love Shannon. I loved him when he was with the Broncos. I loved him when he was in Baltimore. But he even in his Hall of Fame speech, he said, "I'm not even the best receiver in my own house." Sterling
Right.
was a Hall of Famer until he got hurt, and he was great at the University of South Carolina. But when somebody's humble enough to say, "I wasn't even the best in my own house," it has something to do. If you want to be great, you have to be humble, or else you're going to get found out.
Yep. Nope. So you turn your career around. 3 years, you win Soldier of the Year. That's an impressive feat. For those of you who don't know, that's like 6 months of back to back to back to back boards, starting at the company level, going all the way up to the division level, and
Yeah,
if you're lucky
yeah.
enough, all the way up to the Army level. I think now I don't know how it is now. I have a kid that I still mentor in the Army who was preparing for it but got shat on by his command, so
But
he didn't
even
end
like
up
when
doing it this
like
year.
once
But
I figured it's a fucking game again. Every time I went out to guard mount, now guys, this is what I used to do. I don't remember what they're doing now, but I would become the man. I never went to guard because I would always be the man. I had one uniform complete with everything just hanging up just for guard. I literally had chloroform boots that if I wore them outside and they would melt. But I actually just had one uniform just for guard, and I'd go to guard mount and they'd be like, "All right, you want to go to guard? You want to be sergeant of the guard?" I'm like, "I'll be sergeant of the guard today," because I knew
of
I
course,
was going to be
yeah,
the man.
that's so. So let's talk about the third catalyst for change and how that impacted your life. And I assume it's you event. This was what ended your career,
Yeah.
correct?
Well, what happened was I moved. Now I did everything I could become the ultimate soldier. That was my goal every day. I mean, at this point, this was 2012. I'm 173 pounds, shredded, competing in bodybuilding competitions. I'm on the gas, and so I'm maxing PTs. I'm personal training. I got life by the balls, and moved to New Jersey to my wife. We moved here, and I in my and I had to switch units because it was no longer a tanker unit. So again, I had to, I joined a 11 Bang Bang, and the first drill going to AT, one of the vehicles broke. It was an up armored Humvee, and it broke on the side of the road, and I had to ground guide it off so it didn't get hit. And now, if you've ever been in the military, you know that usually you're not supposed to have your soft cap on in a Humvee, but we all kind of do it.
No, you're
Uh,
yeah,
so
everybody
I
does it.
got out, and because I was wearing, my head. I always had a problem with my head, so I always had my hat backwards with the Kevlar
The
on it
K-pop.
because it felt comfortable to me.
Yeah.
So for some reason that day I didn't switch it around and I didn't walk off with my soft cap on, and I'm wearing the Kevlar, which 99 out of 100 times I never did, and I'm backing this kid up, new private, brand new guy, and as I'm doing ground hand and arm signals, instead of him hitting the brakes, he hit the gas, ran over the whole right side of my body, and ran over my head. And the only thing that saved me was the Kevlar, and that caused me to have an ocular stroke, and I went blind that day. one eye and the other one started to go. One eye was, by the time I got, now the funny thing is, like I said, I'm on the gas now. I'm 173, shredded bodybuilder, power lifter. I got up, I shook it off. I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. Don't tell anybody. I'm good. I got this. And I got back in the Humvee. We're driving, and he's like, Sarge, you all right? I'm like, I'm good. Don't worry. I got this. And then it was like a 2 hour drive in a Humvee. Then when I got there, uh, I was totally blind in one eye and like 40% blind in the other eye by the time we got down there. So
So it
it
progressively
got
got
worse.
worse
Yeah.
on the drive to
Yeah.
wherever
And
you were
then,
going. You got up thinking, "Hey, I'm fine," and then over time, obviously, like these things happen, and you get to where you're going. 60% one eye, 40% the other eye. You might as well
yeah.
just
And
be
then they're
blind.
going, you want to go home? And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm like, I'm good. I'm like, come on. I'm Kaufman. I'm Sergeant Kaufman. I'm the ultimate soldier. I'm Soldier of the Year. I ain't going anywhere. If my guys are here, I'm here. And so they put me in the talk for 2 weeks, and I stayed, and I didn't
And
leave.
still blind, not getting any
Yeah, I was
better.
blind as fuck. I couldn't see shit.
And so talk about that. Like, first of all, what's going through your head, right? Because that's got to be scary as hell. I know that's scary as hell, right? I couldn't imagine. I've got terrible eyesight. I have my whole life, and so there's been moments in my life where I might have partied too hard and woken up with no glasses, and I can't see fuck all without my glasses. It's awful. Double vision, everything's blurry. I'm too farsighted with off the charts astigmatism. So everything, like I can't make out faces or anything when
Well,
I
that's
don't
why I
have my
got my Mr.
glasses. So
Magoo's on right now.
so talk to us about that experience. You're in the talk. Like, did you ever think like maybe I should actually go
Well,
get
they
this
checked
checked
me
out?
out,
Like
and
this
they're
isn't
like,
getting
"Yeah, well, there's nothing we can do. When you get back, you can probably have surgery, and they're to correct it." And I'm like, "All right." When I get home,
so you're
yeah, I'm
just gonna
like,
roll
"Fuck it,
with it.
I'm gonna roll with it." I mean, I've gone through everything else in my life, and I figured if my guys are here, I ain't going anywhere. You're gonna have to carry my dead carcass out of here because if I'm gonna be the standard, then I'm gonna be the standard. So again, I stood in the talk for 2 weeks. I learned a shit ton. I think if I didn't stay in that talk for 2 weeks, I wouldn't be as great at business as I am because when you're, I was a tank commander and then sometimes platoon leader, whatever they need me to do. But you only think about your 4 tanks or your 8 tanks. But when you're in the talk and you're overlooking the battlefield, then you're like, there's supply, there's this, there's that. Then you start looking and be like, okay, I see the bigger picture. So if I wasn't in that talk, I don't think that I would be where I am today. So I think everything happens for a reason. And but when I call my wife and I'm like, honey, guess what happened? She's like, what? I'm like, I got run the fuck over. She's like, it's not even 4 hours, and 5 hours. You got hurt already. And I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm good. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And then when I got back and I went to my doctor and he looked at me, he's like, I can do the surgery. You'll be fine. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. He's like, if you don't have 5 grand cash, I can't do nothing for you. I didn't have the money, so I didn't get the surgery. And that was a hard
And the
realization to
army
be like,
wouldn't
okay,
pay for
this is
that.
my new normal. I got to deal with this,
Mhm.
and I'll roll with whatever it is. It's my new normal. Suck it up, drive on.
And so how hard was that for you?
Well, it was hard, and I was talking to somebody because I'm gonna be interviewed 300 times this year. I got 300 interviews I'm gonna be doing this year, and I told him the day before, you know, I'm taking my protein drinks. I'm taking my gas. I'm shredded. I'm feeling great. I mean, 7% body fat. When I come home, I can't even get to the bathroom because I can't see. I can't wipe my own ass because I don't know where the toilet paper's at. I can't make my dinner. I can't even make a snack. So for me, it was totally. It's like, wait a minute, how do I just went from being the ultimate soldier, soldier of the year, winning competitions, and now you can't even wipe your own ass. It's different when you realize, okay, I'm not a man anymore.
Right.
And then you have my 6 month old daughter. Then you have my boys, and you're like, can you go get me an apple? And they're looking at you like, yeah, your kids. They don't know. They're like,
why fucking can't you
go
get your
get
own
your own
apple?
fucking
Yeah, no,
apple.
I get it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm curious because given your history, right? Like you've got a colorful history with drugs and alcohol, and the easiest thing to do when something like that happens to you would be to straight back to that, escape, right? Numb it all out, not have to think about it. So talk to us. Tell us how you avoided doing that. I mean, you're 35 years sober and you went through, hell, dude, I can't even tell you. If I went blind tomorrow, it would probably be bad for me. I would probably fall off of all the work I've done in the last year and all the mindset stuff, and just I would probably be tempted to go back to that stuff. So how did you avoid it?
First of all, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. First of all, but then my wife. Man, my wife's my bride, my best friend. She's everything, and she'd be like, "Listen, if you have a drink, you're out of here. I'm divorcing your ass." So for it was never even an option. But she always said, you want to go to a meeting? I'll drive you to the meeting. I'll get you into the meeting. I'll come pick you up. So she was always there to say, you don't have to go back. And if you do go back, you're not coming back. And I tell
Right.
everybody,
Right.
the 12 steps led me out of my house. Not following the 12 steps led me out of my house the first time. Following the 12 steps brought me my new home the second time. So for me, it was
Yeah.
always, my wife has always been, hey, dumbass, you need to get, even now, she was like, yesterday, she's like, you need to get to a meeting, dumbass, because you're acting stupid. So she's always been that one. She's a
It's
nice little old Sicilian girl, and she always keeps me straight. She's like, listen, dumbass, you need to get to a meeting or you need to straighten up. So she's always been there to watch my back.
yeah.
And the funny thing is, the week
That's
after, 2 weeks after I got hurt, we had our honeymoon in Disney, and I'm half blind now. And during they're having the wine tasting at Epcot, so I'm blind, knocking into people. They're spilling wine on me, and I'm like,
yeah. Of course. Insult to
exactly.
injury.
But those two
Yeah.
things, that's what has kept me on the straight and narrow. Because I know if I drink, I die. But I know if I drink, I lose. If I have one drink, I lose everything.
Yeah. It's not worth it at that
So
point, right? Especially with someone, it's important to have, my wife is very much sounds like what your wife is to you. She has my back. When I came home and told her I'm not going to pursue flying as a career anymore, I'm going to try and build my own thing because that's what I feel called to do. And her words to me were like, you've never not lived up to a promise or taken care of us, so I have your back. And she supports me 100%. And finding someone took me a long time to find three. In fact, this is my third wife, to find that woman that will, see you for who you are, see you for what you're capable of and your potential beyond what you think you're capable of, and support you all the way through it. So I think it's amazing that you have that in your wife. And you're raising three kids together, and she could have tucked tail and ran. I've seen it happen to plenty of guys from my era that got hurt in OIF or OEF, come back missing parts. They try to make it work, and then all of a sudden, guess what? I'm out. This isn't for me. I didn't sign up for
and
this.
then
And
but
so,
even
it's
like
very
2 months
real.
ago, you know, I have over 2 million downloads now. I think we're on like the first 6 or 8 pages of Google. But Spotify fucked me and took everything I had down. I had to start a whole new podcast and a whole thing. And I'm just like, honey, I'm like, I don't know. What do you think? Should I quit? She's like, no. She's like, you spent 6 years building this. Don't quit now. What else are you gonna do? And I'm like, that's what I needed to hear. But if she would have said, you know what, hon, I think it's time we shut down the laptop and we kind of get. I would have been like, okay. But she loved me enough, and we talked about it last night. She was pissed off at me. She's like, I just want you to be happy, and we're building a brand new studio coming up next month for podcasting. It's gonna be like between 5 and 10 grand. But she's like, it's what you do. But if she would have said no, I'm like, okay, it's time. Sometimes you have to say, okay, maybe it's time to hang it up. But she said it wasn't, so like I'm rolling with it.
Hell yeah. I'm excited to get into the next part. So, we covered your early life. We covered, your brutal transition, the shitbaggery that was going on to outstanding soldier, and now you're hurt. And so now the army is not an option for you anymore. You're forced to get out. So when you're cut 7 years short like you were, so you would technically still be in if you were going to 30, right?
But what happened was, because if you guys are listening to this and you're not military, if you get hurt on duty or they send you to something called the Warrior Transition Unit, I don't know what it's called now, but for like 18 months, I had to go to drill and sit there from Monday, go down Saturday, go down Sunday, until they decide what you're going to do with your ass. So the first day I got there, I'm like everybody else. I'm watching everybody, and they're playing chess and cards, and I did the same thing. But I'm like, my ADD, my ADHD. I'm like, yeah, if I got to do 18 months of this, I can't do it. So I bought books because I'm a big reader. I'm a ninth grade dropout, but I've read over 6,000 books. I got 18 books going right now, plus 2 audios. So I'm a big. I have that ADD mind where I try to soak up knowledge. So I bought a purple book. It was a simple purple book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lechter. I've had them on the show. And then as soon as that book ended, I looked in the back and I'm like, oh, they got another book. They got another book. So every weekend I would come with like 2, 3 books and I would read them the whole time. Then I started getting into Tony Robbins, Tim Ferriss, and I kept hearing this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. And I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Everybody's talking about this guy. So I still had I was about 30% vision at this. I mean, I had like 70%, 60%. So I was able to watch YouTube. So I would just started watching everything Gary Vaynerchuk put out. My wife hated Gary V. Hated Gary.
So it's yeah, yeah. A lot of people
Because
do
all
in
the
the beginning.
cursing and
So
then all that. But
what?
once you got past that,
It, it, he's a smart man. He's a very smart man, and he gives a lot of good advice. I guess so. What I'm hearing you say is dealing with the blindness and the end of your career and going to the WTU and having to be there for 18 months, obviously not being mentally engaged. You picked up books. So would you say, I know Rich Dad Poor Dad changed my life. It changed everything about how I view the world and finances and money, and that led me into the second book, Cash Flow
love that
Quadrant, to
book.
really
Love that
understand.
book.
Yeah, that one's super important, and those are the. I'll be honest with you, those are the only two Kiyosaki books I
I got
read
a
because
whole
then I
shelf
started.
and it's all purple. From one shelf, one thing, and it's all purple. And I love Sharon Lechter, and she wrote an amazing book with Greg S. Reed, 3 Feet from Gold. So guys, if you ever get a chance, check out that book. But that was for
What
me. It was just like, okay, it's coming to an end. Whether I like it or
Yep.
not, it's coming to an end. So what am I going to do with this? And that's why I figured, okay, let me start reading about business. And then once I started hearing about podcasting, because it still wasn't hot back then, and this was around 2012, it wasn't as hot as it is now. And that's when I started to really think, well, maybe I'll start a podcast. And then after my suicide attempt, that's when I actually had a meeting, or actually got to meet Gary V, had lunch with him, and that's how he totally turned my whole world around.
So let's back up a minute because I want to make sure we get this right because I think it's important. You started reading at the WTU and then really got interested in business as a way of life after you got out, because what I'm finding, the more veterans that I talk to, the more don't actually even consider the entrepreneurship route or business ownership, buying a franchise, buying, some kind of storage unit or whatever. It's never been presented to them in a palatable way, like it's a possibility for them. So was all of the reading that you were doing and the books you were picking up, is that what got the wheels turning on the
No, well,
entrepreneurial journey?
like I said, I was in the National Guard, so I wasn't full time. But when I moved to New Jersey, um, I think it was like September 3rd, whatever, 2010 maybe. And I'm like, I'm gonna go out and find a job. My wife's like, I said, it was like 11 o'clock. I'm like, I'm gonna be back in an hour. I'm gonna go find a job. She'd be like, fuck, you gonna go find a job in an hour? But
Right.
I
Watch
was
me.
with
That's how.
any place I was ever stationed or ever lived. I worked at the GNC. I worked at the vitamin shop. I worked at the gym. I was a personal training guy. I had all the magazines. So and I took classes. So I walked into the guy's GNC and I'm like, "You hiring?" He's like, "No, but my brother is." I went to see his brother. He looked at me because I was shredded at the time, and he's like, "Well, what do you know?" And I'm like, "Ask me a question." I'm like, "Yeah," because when I was a young kid at 6 or 7, I was reading. My mom was a nurse. I'm reading books on anatomy, physiology. I was a bit. I read every bodybuilding magazine. So he asked me questions. He's like, "All right, when do you want to start?" I'm like, "I'm here now." You see, he hired me on the spot. I called my wife. I'm like, "I'm gonna be late. I just started my new job." And the thing
That's
is,
awesome, man.
he owned a franchise, and
Mhm.
I worked there when I got hurt, and he still kept me on. But then he started teaching me the back of the house. He started teaching me about ordering. He started teaching me.
Which immediately probably sparked your
Yeah,
interest,
he
right? Because now you're occupying your mind. You're turning back into that
and he
field
mentored
craft
me. He's
guy,
like,
right? The
"Okay,
guy
well,
who's always
this
busy.
is how this is what an ROI is. This is how I do my checks. This is how I do my balances. This is how I figure out my margins." So everything I was learning in Rich Dad Poor Dad, he was teaching me in real world, and it was kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, which was my biggest complaint with Rich Dad Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant. For me, it was like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but I need someone who's implemented these strategies to really show me, to really paint this picture for me. So I think those books are great to introduce you to it, but then it's really just the beginning. Man, it's I mean the beginning, because there is an entire world that opens up to you that you didn't even realize existed when you start learning about this stuff. And it's why I believe that the path back to purpose for veterans after they transition out is through entrepreneurship. It's like this never ending mission to build your own business. And there's just so much that you constantly have to learn, and so many moving pieces that you constantly have to nurture and take care of, or else it all falls apart, that it's just really hard to be distracted, or to let all that fall by the wayside, because you care about something and it's
Well,
yours.
and the thing is weird is like when I first started with Kumar, he's still my best friend. I mentioned him in my book, thanking him for mentoring me. The store was doing 300,000 a year. Within 3 years, we hit 1.4 million when I first started there because I was that guy. Even my shift started at 2. I'm at the gyms at 12 o'clock. I'm dropping off flyers. I'm talking to people. I'm working out. I'm networking everywhere. So we hit like 1.4 in 3 years. But but I think talking about business in a way, before we even get any further, sometimes we get so pigeonholed in our business. Like as I was working with Kumar, now we're doing 1.4 million a year. I'm thinking we're doing fucking great. I think we're doing awesome. All kinds of awards, and you're like top 2% or whatever. I go have lunch with the guy that owns Muscle Farm, and he's doing a million a month. And that's when my mind was like back in the talk. I'm like, okay, there's a bigger picture out there than just where I'm at. And I think when we're first starting out in business, we still have that small thing instead of seeing bigger pictures out there.
100%. And I like that you related it to your time in the talk, because I also, that Afghanistan deployment I got myself into, that's the only capacity First Sergeant would take me in. I was going to run the talk. And I was pissed about it, right? I'm a ground pounder. I need to be kicking indoors, shooting people in the face, doing my job. And that's what I had done for 3 deployments before that. And this one, man, I couldn't agree with you more. It taught me so much about how the Army works, the bigger picture. And until you said it earlier in this episode, I didn't even relate it to business, but it's so true, because it does. You get, instead of a 1,000-foot view as a platoon sergeant or squad leader, you now have a 10,000-foot view of what's going on around you, and how all of these moving pieces work together to get the mission done. And it was incredible. And I echo what you're saying, because for me, that experience lends itself very well to building out, this business and anything I choose to do in the future. So let's move, a little bit wherever we are in your timeline. You said you had the suicide attempt, and so now I assume this is after you're out,
No,
after
it's
you've had your
actually the
injury, you're
day
blind.
that they tell me, they call me in, and we all know the time's coming. We know it's coming. But when they take my ID card and say, you are no longer Sergeant Kaufman, and then I think, wait a minute, slow down, slow your roll. Because, like, when I moved to New Jersey, sometimes it takes a couple months to transfer units or whatever, paperwork and all that. I would drive 13 hours to drill and drive 13 hours home. I never missed a drill in a year and a half. So, wait a minute, you just told me, explain to me, you're like, you can't see, you can't shoot, we don't need you. Good luck. Enjoy your VA benefits. That's it. Because, and I talk about this on my show all the time, and we talk about it when me and you got on the phone, that when you get out of the military doesn't give a shit about you. Your
They
phone
don't
stops
care.
ringing.
You are a number.
You don't have camaraderie. You don't have a mission, and you don't. A lot of us don't have a paycheck, and then so you're either looking at the bottom of a bottle or at the end of a barrel, and
Or
I know
both
that's
at
where
the
it's
same
heading.
time.
So, and of
Yeah.
course, I'm still dumb. I'll never. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Uh, I figured, because in the military, if you die on duty, your family gets taken care of a certain amount. I mean, you're not going to be living with the Kardashians. But I figured, if I die on my way home from drill, I have till midnight. If I die, my family's going to be taken care of financially. So I'm no longer a man because I'm half blind. I can't take care of my family because now who knows how long it's going to be before I get VA benefits. So I can't see. My career's over, you know, and I can't take care of my family. So if I take my own life and the government doesn't know I did it on purpose, then they'll be taken care of. So that was the plan. And like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. I got in my car and I had a brand new Dodge Ram because I always wanted one. When I was going through in 2003, I always see these big vans. I mean, these big trucks coming through with the big hoods, and I'm like, oh fuck, I want one so bad. So I bought one.
I'm a Ram man
I'm a
myself,
big.
so I
I just love the
relate. I
Dodge. I'm a
love them.
Dodge guy.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mopar
yeah.
or no
So, and
car.
I'm like, you know what? I call my wife, and I'm like, because we are supposed to go down the shore for the weekend. It was Labor Day weekend, 2012. Called her, said I'm on my way. Tell my daughter and my boys I love them. Now they were 12. Uh, she was 6 months, something like that. And I knew I was never going to talk to her again. I knew I would never hear my wife's voice again. And that's fucked up when you start realizing I'm talking to somebody that I'll never talk to my wife again. But I knew I had to do this for the family.
It gives me chills,
I
man.
had to
Oh,
do this for the family. I had no choice. So my plan was, again, stupid plan. I plan on getting my truck up to 100 miles an hour. We know with a Dodge Ram, that doesn't take very long. So I did. I got on the highway, told my wife, I love you. I'll see you in a little bit. Knew I would never see her. Got in the truck. My plan was to get the truck up to 100 miles an hour, put it on cruise, turn the radio up, and go off the road and hit a pylon at 100 miles an hour. I'm dead. I'm gone. And you know how, like, the reflectors on the side of the road? So I'm driving, and now I'm an old heavy metal dude. I'm Five Finger Death Punch. I'm AC/DC. But then I'm also an old hip hop head, Tupac, Biggie. I put on a country station. I have no clue why. I'm like, wait, I'm gonna die to country music. I'm like, this is just perfect. But as I'm driving and I close my eyes and I turn the radio up and I feel the car moving and moving and I hear the reflectors and I'm like, all right, I'm about 3 seconds from death. And the song that came on was by Clint Black. It's called "I Saw God Today," and it talks about a man looking at his daughter for the first time and having his hand up against the glass. And I'm thinking, when my daughter was born, I was the first one to ever change her diaper, first one to feed her, first one to hold her, never missed a doctor's appointment. And I'm like, I'm going to miss my daughter. I'm going to miss my family. And at that moment, and that's where this t shirt comes from, today I decided I can either be a statistic or I can be a husband and a father. And I jerked the car and I'm crying like a little baby. I jerked the car. Thank God there was nobody to my left. I pulled over. I called my wife and she was pissed off like she was last night. And I said, honey, I told her what happened. She's like, motherfucker. And I'm like, listen, honey, if I don't get help this weekend, I'm probably going to go home and eat my gun. And she says, I got you. We can't do anything this weekend because it's Labor Day, but we'll get you into treatment that Tuesday morning. And got me into treatment Tuesday morning. And I've been seeing the same therapist for 12 years now. Now it's 12 years. But for me, that was the third today I decide moment. And I think a lot of us reached that point. What's the decision we're going to make? Are we going to be a statistic? Mm-hmm. Or are we going to take our own lives? Are we going to kill ourselves but pass the pain on to our families? And that's why I do what I do now. That's why I always wear the shirt. I got plenty of them, but that's why I always wear the shirt. Even out, I'll be outside and people are like, what'd you decide today? I'm like, I decided to live. And it starts people talking. Yeah. So, and at that moment, as I went to my first appointment, from that day on is when I'm like, I can't be the only one struggling with this. There's got to be millions of us out there. So let me start a podcast talking about it and giving hope to people. And that's when I thought about it. But then the chance meeting with Gary, and he's the one that came up with the comeback coach. He's the one that came up with the hashtag. So if it wasn't for Mr. Vaynerchuk, I would not be doing what I'm doing today. So Gary, I want to say, I love you. You're probably never going to watch this, but I love you, brother.
Oh man, that's a goal, dude. I'd love to talk
awesome
to you.
Dude. Awesome dude. What happened was, okay, I started, like I said, my wife, we'd be laying in bed and she'd be like, oh, you listen to that fucking guy again, Arch. I hate Gary. Because I had the YouTube on the TV and I would just watch everything. And then one day he said, I think is when he had his original show, Wine Library. And he says, yeah, my dad owns the liquor store in Springfield, New Jersey. And I was there last week and I sat there going, how do I get an audience with Gary Vee? So I called his father and I said, hey, because I was with GNC, and I'm like, hey, I made it sound all business. And I'm like, hey, this is Rich from General Nutrition Center. I'd like to speak with Gary, Mr. Vaynerchuk, whenever you had a chance. I wasn't going to say Gary V, but he's like, yeah, he'll be here, whatever. I think it was a Saturday or something. I'm like, all right, just let him know that Rich from General Nutrition Center will be there. I got there and I'm like, I showed up with a book in my hand. I showed up with the jab, 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 right hook. And I'm sure he's looking at me like, fucking guy, he didn't just do this to me. And I'm like, Gary, I'm not leaving until you talk to me. And he was so gracious and humble. And I got pictures of me and him chatting. And for the first couple of years, if you were to watch his old videos, my Wounded Warrior hat would be hanging up in his office.
That's awesome.
So he's the one that, sat me down and we were talking. He came over to comeback coach and tell me about, how inspiring my story is. And but then I left. Before I left, because anytime I'm ever with somebody, like when I leave, when you have me on your show, I'm going to ask you for a nugget that I can use for the rest of my life. I said, Gary, I'm not leaving until you give me something. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, just give me something, a golden nugget that I can use for the rest of my life. And it's something that I use it at least once a day. He said, your legacy will always be more valuable than your currency. And from that moment on,
Such
everything
a
in my
good one.
life has been for legacy. Money will come, but as long as I'm trying to change the world and build a legacy, the money will come. And I think a lot of people think about the currency first and then the legacy. It doesn't work that way. For me, it doesn't work that way. You know,
It does not. It doesn't work that way for anybody, man. And I'm guilty when I started building my thing, just randomly trying to build an audience on LinkedIn. I was using AI, doing all the things you're not supposed to do, trying to make a buck. And pretty quick, when I switched to why am I really doing this? What do I really want to be doing? Well, I want to stop the notifications on my phone to two, three, four, five, sometimes in 1 month, dead battle buddies. And these are men and women that I fought with in combat. Like these are really good human beings, and it's got to stop. And I felt powerless. And when you turn it around and start focusing on, for me, it's just service to others, helping others, improving their situation in life, even just a little bit, right? That is has been way more fruitful than anything I could have ever done worrying about making money. When the time is right, the universe will give me all the money that I need. I'm not worried about that as long as I'm doing the thing to lift others up.
and I shocked somebody. They asked, "Well, what is your secret of success today?" And by no means am I saying I'm a millionaire or a billionaire. My success is different than everybody, probably everybody else. And I told people, if I open my wallet, I wrote my own obituary. I wrote my own obituary, and I have to make sure that I live up to that guy that I wrote about. Like if I say I'm going to be a great husband, I can't be out there fucking around on my old lady. If I say I'm going to be a great father, I got to make sure that I'm present. If I say I'm going to be, one of the greatest interviewers ever, then I got to put in the work to be that man in my wallet. And I think once you figure out where you want to go and start work, I never remember the word that they use. It's like backwards planning. I forget what the name is. But once you, you
That's
know,
how I do it. I start with the end in mind and then I work backwards from there. All the steps it's going to take to get to where I want to go. It's just easier for my brain to understand what I need to do. And it's just worked for me since
but
day
what, like for
one.
me, like the average American male lives to 78 years old. I'm 55, so I got 23 years left. And if I have my obituary already written, then I know where I need to go. And I can't,
Yeah.
if I'm talking with Adam right now, I know where I'll be 5 years from now because I'm planning it out 23 years ahead. But I think a lot of people, and every billionaire I've talked to, and I'm like, before you get involved with a deal, what do you do? He's like, figure out the exit strategy. And they're telling me, I'm not going to buy into a business if there's not an exit strategy. So that's, and we're all leaving. Like the great poet laureate Jim Morrison said, nobody gets out of here alive, guys. So you might as well enjoy your life, but plan for success, and use that backwards planning of the life that you want to live.
So, where did the idea to write your own obituary
I don't
come
know.
from?
Like I said, I've read over 6,000 books. I think it was my dad passed Valentine's Day 2 years ago, and my mother went into a nursing home about the same time, and I had to clean out their house, and I was alone in the house for like 10, 14 days, and without TV, without cable, and all I bought was books. And one of the books I read was a book by Dean Graziosi, and it talks about the seven whys. And I did the seven whys, literally wrote it all out. And then I'm like, but that makes sense. So if I write my own obituary, all the whys are there already. So now I just keep it in my wallet. So whenever I open my wallet, I'm like, Even if I want to do something stupid, even if I, want to get in an argument with my best friend, and I'm like, but you said he was your best friend. He was a good guy. So why am I gonna ruin that? So it's kind of like it's a way to keep me on track. Is whenever I open up my wallet, it's there.
Now, is there times where you go back and read it and rewrite it based on what you've accomplished or your trajectory moving forward, so that you can constantly kind of have this working document to show that your obituary improves as you improve in life as well, or is it just set in stone and it's there for you to follow until
Well,
the end?
no, and I'm going to be honest, and I didn't think I was going to talk about this, but last night I came this close to becoming a member of the 22. I had such a bad day, and guys, it was all my fault. And that's something in my life you'll never hear me blame anybody else for anything. And it was because of a conversation I had with Ed Milet over the phone, and we could talk about that later. But I came so close to become a member of the 22, and I told my wife, just know I love you and the kids. She looked at me. She's like, "You mfing son of a blankety blank blank." And then I thought about it, and then I literally went and go grab my wallet, went into the living room, and actually read my obituary. And I'm like, it doesn't jive. It doesn't work. So that little piece of paper saved my life yesterday.
Thank you for sharing that with us, because that's what this show is all about. Just brutal vulnerability and honesty, and you know putting these stories out. My whole goal with this is just another veteran sees you tell this story. You're what, 54,
55 now. I'm
53?
old, man. I can't even drive 55 like Sammy
55,
Hagar. I can't even drive 55.
50, you're 55 years old. You've got a decade out, right? You went and got help once, and it's still a struggle for you. You still have bad days. I still have bad days. You're always going to have those feelings. But what I've found is it's really, you talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, it's about balance. Celebrate the wins for 3 minutes, celebrate the losses for 3 minutes, but never too high and never too low. And it almost sounds like you were just a little out of
Always
balance,
way out of
right? So
balance. And again, like I don't care if you like Grant Cardone or not. I hated him the first couple years until I got a chance to talk to him, and then we started talking about recovery. He's like, yeah, I used to be an addict. Now I'm just addicted to success. I was like, now I get it. But he said something in his book. Sometimes I might read a book, and I might just get a line from that book. Just like when I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad, I didn't get a lot. I mean, I got the story and all that. But when he said the difference between rich people and poor people, the rich people say, "Well, how can I afford it?" Poor people says, "Well, I can't afford it." So I got one line out of the whole book. But once Grant Cardone said that from this moment on, when you're reading this page, if you realize that everything is your fault and take full responsibility, you're free. So whether you lose or you fail, it's all on you. So my argument with my wife last night, that was 100% my fault. And I had to go publicly apologize to her, apologize to her person. Like, listen, I was an idiot. I was a fucking idiot. So, I'm sorry. But, for me, but if I didn't have that piece of paper in my wallet, I might not be here today. So that's what literally saved my bacon last night. And I'm not that guy, people know me, I'm the same guy on camera. You know that. I'm the same guy on camera, off camera. I'm the same goofy guy. We ever get together, everybody's getting a big hug. So I'm not, if I'm having a bad day, guys, I'm struggling. I'm having a bad day. And a lot of people like, did he just say that on one of his reels that he's struggling too? Well, I'm struggling. So let me reach out to him. We could struggle together. And that's for me, that's the biggest thing that, and I tell everybody, and I do this post about once or twice a month, you know, I would rather hear your problems than your eulogy. It may be bullshit. It may be whatever it is, but I'd rather hear that than your eulogy. And I feel if people think, okay, well, if Rich is still going through this shit, even though he's a best-selling author, top podcast, if he's still struggling, then it's okay to struggle. And I tell everybody, whether it's this, and I love what The Rock says, whether it's the CEO or the janitor, we're all going through the same shit. We're all going through something. So as long as I give a little bit of hope and go from dope dealer to hope dealer, if I could do that, then I'm doing my job.
So, was it the conversation with Gary Vee and him kind of branding you the comeback coach that really pushed you into the podcasting and really turning podcasting into a business for you? Is that what really kind of opened the door for
Bro,
you in
and you
that,
got my
or
book, right?
was it a
You got
combination of?
you got the book. You got my first one. The second one's out now. I am the worst podcaster in the history of podcasting. I started podcasting at Gary. I first started. I would I worked for GNC, so I would be like, all right, Total War just came out with a new pre workout. I'm gonna taste it right now live for you, and I'd be on there. I'd be like, bro, this tastes like ass. I'm like, but it fucking works. So I would just try products and
Right.
leave reviews. So that's how it started out. But I now then the first real guy I interviewed, and it turned my life around. He had no legs, no arms, and his wife is holding this phone to his ear as I'm interviewing him because he is skiing in Aspen with his family with no arms and no legs.
Is his name Travis Mills?
Maybe, could be, maybe.
That
But
guy's story
but,
is
but like I
incredible.
said, and that's when I was thinking, okay, he struggles. Even I just had a guy named Aaron Hale on my show. You need to get him on your show if you get a chance. He's blind and deaf because of an EOD explosion. He done, well, it was last year, July 4th. He ran the Badwater 135, deaf and blind, the same race that Goggins had problems with, and he finished the race. So, but those are the people I started thinking, oh, okay, I'm blind. I'm 60% blind, but I got two arms and two legs. So if they can tell me what they struggled with and how they got through it, that's what the people I want to talk to. And then it started to morph into, okay, a lot of people, my main mentor is John Lee Dumas, the number one podcaster in the world. And he actually wrote the whole back page of this book. But a lot of people don't realize that he was an army captain in Iraq. He lost a tank crew and he was suicidal and he had to deal with depression and anxiety. But a lot of people just know him for being, um, being John Lee Dumas. And a lot of people know Sharon Lecter, but a lot of people don't know that Sharon Lecter lost her son to the 22. He was a Marine. And a lot of people don't realize that, Robert Kiyosaki was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. A lot of people don't know that Patrick Bet David is an Army veteran. So these people have stories, but it's not all they are. And I think veterans, we get stuck in that mindset. Well, I'm a veteran. Well, now what? What have you evolved into? And that's for me, like, okay, this is where we were. If you want to become if you want, whatever you want to do, whether you want to become an entrepreneur, well, here's another way to have another mission again. So that's what the podcast for me is all about, helping veterans and first responders find their mission after they hang up that uniform for the last time.
Which is essentially, I mean, when we met last week, did our call, I had never met you before, and I went first. I told you what the show was about, and I was like, it sounds like I'm ripping your show off. And you were very, very upfront. You're like, brother, like there is more than enough to go around. There needs to be more people doing this, and I want to support you in any way that I can. And it's an amazing culture. I'm not saying all these other veterans have to build a podcasting business, because it's not going to resonate with everybody, but it's a testament to, if you follow really your gut and what you're good at, you can absolutely make a difference in people's lives and turn it into a business and live a fulfilling, happy life that aligns with your core values and that you don't hate every day. Would
Yeah,
you
and the
agree
thing
with that?
is, because I always talk about, if imagine if you would have went to your recruiter and he would have said, "All right, bro, let me tell you what, you're gonna get hurt. You're gonna hang up your uniform for the last time. Let's start getting you prepared now." Because they don't tell you you have a shelf life. And
Right.
unfortunately, there's not a lot of 80-year-old veterans running around in uniform. So, but for us, we can talk and say, listen, guys, whether you're getting out, whether you're out now, just because one part of your life ended, why don't we take everything you've learned, all the leadership you've learned, learn how to do SOPs, and bring it into business, whatever it is. It could be underwater basket weaving, but if you have an SOP and you know how to run a 9 line like you did in the military, and you use it as a business, you'll be successful. And if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, okay, you could be an entrepreneur. Like my wife's an entrepreneur. She's been with her company 30 years. I mean, we have, millions in IRAs and 401ks. So you don't have to be an entrepreneur, but you could be an entrepreneur and take everything you've learned and say, okay, well, I'm going to start using SOPs. I'm going to start using 9 lines, and I'm going to apply it to my working business. I mean, where I work. So you don't have to be an entrepreneur, but, you know, at least if you're an entrepreneur and you use everything you've learned, if you've done I've talked to somebody, if you've done 4 years in the military, even 2 years, they spend over $100,000 a year on you teaching you leadership skills. So even if you did 6 years, that's $600,000 they've they've poured into you. And the big thing is, we fuck it all up is when we write on our resumes a bunch of nomenclatures, and they look at it and they're like, "I got nothing," and their eyes glaze over and they throw it away.
And it's so good to hear you talk about this because on this show, we refer to those as high leverage skills. And I believe from day one, no matter what branch you go into, they are teaching you these high leverage skills that gives you this advantage immediately in the business world, or even like you said, as an entrepreneur, inside of a company, as long as you know how to communicate inside of the company, but it gives you this just leg up on everybody else because for my example, right, like for me, 13 years of leadership, of resiliency, of problem solving, of adaptability, right, all of these skills that are imperative to building a business, because guess what, nobody really knows how to build a business. I mean, they say they know, but they only know because they took all the steps, right? The vast majority of building a business is not knowing what the fuck you're doing half the time, right? Like probably 3/4 of the time. And then all of a sudden shit just comes together. You have a level up, and then it's on to the next set of higher level problems, right? And then you rely on those same skills that we were taught from day one in the military, that we've carried with us after the military, that we got us past the first hurdle in building our business to these next higher level problems. And you just start the whole cycle all over again. The leadership, the problem solving, the adaptability, right? It just repeats.
But one thing, and I'm big on it, guys, if you know me, I'm totally honest. I'm a low tech redneck. So I mean, I think we have I'm almost at 30,000 connections on LinkedIn. But I'm taking LinkedIn Learning, which I love. And if you're a veteran, guys, listen, you get LinkedIn Learning for free for a whole year, and you can take as
Yep.
many business courses as you want for free. So make sure you join LinkedIn and you get the free premium. But I'm taking a basic computer course because I'm a low tech redneck, and they literally said, "This is a computer." Literally,
That was in one of
it's
the
because it says
courses.
beginner basic computers. But okay, that you Gary, even Gary says, you know, um, triple down on what you're good at. Fuck what you're not good at, but at least know something. But something we don't talk about is we know hard skills, but how many ever taking courses on soft skills? How many people ever taken a
Right.
course on listening, not hearing,
Yep.
but active listening? How many of us have you taken a courses on how to talk to other people, how to build relationships? Because with you can have all the hard skills in the world, But in today's age, if you don't have soft skills, you're not going to make it. You're just going to be a computer engineer guy sitting in a back room. You're not going to be a CEO.
And this is perfect for what I wanted to go into next, because I know from our first conversation, we believe a lot the same. It's about a network, right? Your network is your net worth. And you have mentioned some very, very big names: Gary Vaynerchuk, Ed Milet, Grant Cardone, Patrick Bet-David. How many of these people are in your network that you have access to? And tell me, or tell the audience rather, because I already understand, but how much building a network really just, it almost like rocket ships growth when you start reaching out to people and connecting with people, especially particularly those that you may be afraid to reach out to, right? I didn't have to. Well, so the way you and I met, let's just talk about that. I made a post on Facebook because I realized pretty quick that the veteran community on LinkedIn is, they're present, but they're not really present. They are way more prominent on Facebook. So I knew I had to get guests for this show. And so I made a Facebook post in which several people responded. So now I'm going and sending people DMs, and you happen to be one of those people. So that's how we met, right? And then I looked you up on LinkedIn and I'm like, holy shit, this dude, right? Like, I would be scared to reach out to this guy just because I don't have anything to offer you in return for being a guest on my podcast. I don't have an audience. And I know there are people out there that look at shit like that. I'm not saying that you are that way, because clearly you are exactly the opposite of that. You have offered to help me since day one, since minute one. And so speak to building a network and what that's like, because honestly, there are a couple of creators that I need to get over myself and just reach out to: Kevin Seif, Greg Van Dyne. I'd really like to have those guys from the Harder Not Smarter podcast on here. I'd really like to get Tyler Schmacher, because I've seen those guys building on LinkedIn. I know what they're doing, but it's just like, oh, you've got 17, 18, 22,000 followers. I don't have anything to offer you, so I'm letting that stand in my way. I'm talking to a guy who called Gary Vaynerchuk's liquor store, got his dad on the phone. His dad tells him, I'm going to be here Saturday. And this motherfucker shows up, right? Like, similarly to how I got my job in insurance after I got fed up knocking doors, I just printed a resume and walked around and asked for a job. You did that as well. So talk about building a network and how important that is to moving forward in business. I think it's probably one of the most important things.
Again, I've done everything ass backwards, back asswards. Because Gary told me to write my book. Now, at this time, this is 2012, I literally have my wife and my cousin are the only two people on Facebook that I know. I have zero audience. And I'm like, bro, what do you mean write a book? He's like, I want you to write a book, and I want you to write all the dirty shit you've ever done. And I'm like, I don't get it. And he's like, okay, I want you to watch the movie 8 Mile, and I want you to get back to me. Watch the last 2 minutes. And I'm like, okay. I'm a big Eminem guy. Even when the last time we were coming on your show, I had Lose Yourself bumping.
That was great.
I watched it,
it was
and
awesome.
I'm like, I'm dumb. I still don't get it. He's like, I want you to put all the shit out you've ever done out there, so nobody can ever say, you were divorced twice. Yeah, but now you have a great wife. You got a great husband. I mean, you got a great wife. You got a great kids. Yeah, you lived in a crack house. Yes, you ate dog food. You were eating out of garbage cans. But now when you go out, you eat filet mignon and steak and lobster. So nobody could ever say anything bad about you because you've already said it. And once you put all your shit out there, people can say, I can relate to that dude. And then he's like, I want you to start a podcast. I'm like, all right, I just went over this. I have nobody that even knows who the hell I am. And he's like, they'll show. You start a podcast, you have an audience, it will grow. I'm like, and then I've taken courses by Zach Babcock, Travis Johnson, Eric Allen, Gary, and I've taken all these courses, and then I realized I can reach out to anybody. And what I did is I don't know if a guy named, his name is Steve D. Sims. He is probably one of the greatest people in the world. He is the guy that He's best friends with Elton John. He actually he is the concierge to the billionaires. He actually had somebody made it that they would actually have lunch at the foot of Michael, what's his name, in Italy, Michelangelo, with Andre Bocelli playing for him, just for him and his wife. So he's the guy that gets shit done. And I had a conversation. I had him on the show, and I'm like, because somebody told me you want to get him on the show. I'm like, but I'm like, yo, I got nothing to offer this man. I got no audience, literally. So I sat and I'm thinking, what if I buy his book, learn everything about it, do a post, tag him in it, and do a Facebook ad for his post for $1 a day? He started getting inundated, seeing my name everywhere. And then I reached out a month later and I'm like, Steve, I would love to have you come on the show. I love your book. This is what I got out of it. I would love to have you come on the show and promote your book. And he's like, when do I start? Where do I sign up?
Right.
And I didn't even have a calendar. Like, I'm like, uh. And I was on audio. I wasn't even video yet. But because I added value and gave, he was willing to come on the show. And he's been on the show 3 times. I've had David Meltzer come on the show. He's worth $20 billion. I had the guy that they wrote the show, Lee Steinberg, the guy Jerry Maguire, they wrote him about. So that's how I approached people when I had no audience. I was just like, what, you got a new book coming out? I would love to promote your book. And people, if you add value to them, most of the time they're going to say no. Now I had one guy, he's like, yeah, I don't do Anchor. I think it was back Anchor. Like, I don't do that. Like, okay. Got 2 million downloads. He's like, hey, bro, I'd love to come on the show. I was like, yeah.
Now
And
you
I
have
had
the
him on the
chance,
show,
man.
and I called him
Yep.
out on the show. Oh, wait, here you are.
Yeah. Yeah. In my journeys of trying to get guests, it's been a very pleasant experience. I've only had 2 people tell me no, and I get it. I'm not offended, but it does kind of piss me off because genuinely, I want them to come tell their story, but I get mad mainly because they're stuck in their own way with whatever their beliefs about social media are or whatever, and it's like, hey man, like this is kind of free exposure for your company that you're trying to build, and like this is helping me out, so let's just come together and help each other out because that's what we do as a community. And I'm taking notes because I'm not going to stop doing this. And it's like what you just said, you just start, and in 5 years you'll be somewhere. You're going to succeed with consistency and building a network, right? Like, I'm keeping track because I want to know who wants to be a benefit of my success instead of a contributor to my success, right? And that matters to me a lot, and I think it should matter to everyone, yourself included. And maybe not having them on the show is not the right way to go about it, but definitely I like your idea about having them on the show and then calling them out about it and actually turning it into a conversation, because that provides the audience with a ton of value. You get a peek into his mindset
But then,
at the
like,
time, right?
and I think
Whatnot.
because I spent the $15 on Audible. I did $1 a day, which I learned from Dennis Yu. So for $50, I had one of the largest entrepreneurs in the world on my podcast for $50. What's the ROI of that? Because when you Google Steve D. Sims, you'll see my podcast interview show up. So
How does that make you feel when you see what you've accomplished?
I'm my worst critic. Because
Of course, but putting that aside, honestly, how does it? Is there a point of pride there?
depends on the
Do you
minute.
feel?
Because I'm the
How do you
guy
feel right
that
now?
I'm the guy that I look at every day. I'm a big analytics guy, and I have no education, but I look at my analytics sometimes too much, and I'll look at the rankings and I'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
shit, Gary got me today, or I'll be like, because I know that I'm not at the level of Joe Rogan. and they call me the male Oprah. They call me the GI Joe Rogan. But I know that when my rankings come, I'm up there with Tim Ferriss, Patrick Bet David. I'm up there with Gary. But then I'm like, oh, fuck, Joe got me. I'm not on that list. So it's always like, okay, what's next? It's always that. Okay, how do I get to that? What is he doing? What is Alex and Layla Hormozi doing? What can I learn from them? How can I get them to come on the show? So for me, it's like it's the 3 minute rule. It's like, okay, yeah, your book hit number one yesterday. Now it's number 12, and I'm like, fuck, I'm pissed off. Girl. It was number one
Yeah.
yesterday. Who are the other 11 guys? What did they do? You know what I mean? So for me, it's
Right.
sometimes it's great, but I'm also that guy that I know when we log off, I got to take the dog out and she's going to shit somewhere in the yard and I got to pick it up. So I'm not that cool.
Yep.
I'm not, you know what I mean? I have that awareness about me,
I mean, I,
you know?
Yeah, I'm very much the same guy. I got two dogs. I'm gonna have to go pick up their shit as soon as we're done here. And then my wife happens to be sick right now, so it's on me to cook dinner tonight or whatever, right? I'm just a regular guy. But since I released the podcast, the first episode dropped a week ago, the support behind me has been incredible. And everybody from my military buddies to the civilian buddies are like, "You've got a thing going on here. Don't ever stop doing this. You're a natural at this. I like it." And like, I take the same approach as you. I'm a humble guy. I feel like it's shit. I feel like it could be so much better. And the only reason I wanted to talk about this is because I want to present to the audience that like, you're gonna feel like this a lot. I think that's pretty common among business owners in general. And no matter what, you have to show up every day and keep doing it because the product only gets better. I bet you go back and you look at some of your early episodes and they're just
All the time.
cringeworthy.
Even my newest episodes, I'll be like, oh, I said, huh. Because I'm old
Right.
school Gary V style. I do zero editing. Whatever gets
You just,
said, and that's it. So I'll hear stuff and I'll be like, I should edit that out. But then when I think back when I was a kid, I used to watch like all this. I was watching. I'm a big NFL guy, and I would watch all the screw ups that they have and all the bleepers. And I'm like, I still want to have that on the show. So when people are like, oh, it's not too edited. Rich might say fuck here and there. I want it to be there so that people know, well, it's real, and they're just not editing shit out. So I don't edit anything.
I edit minimally. But obviously, right, everybody's different. I take the same approach. I want this to be as authentic as possible in a show, and eliminating mishaps here and there is just part of my process. It doesn't have to be part of
Even
yours.
like for me, I used to watch the old Gary videos. Some of his videos that had like 50 million views were him at a garage sale with a flip cam. So it doesn't have to be all this, even the book is all about that. It doesn't have to be all this fancy shit. Just make great content and people are going to show up.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I want to talk more about your show, and I really want to know how has the show and the sharing of stories of resilience impacted you in your personal life, and is it kind of a almost like a therapy for you and kind of help you walk that
Yeah,
straight and
well, for
narrow?
me, I consider getting a BA in business for free. I've had millionaires, billionaires, authors, athletes. Because what I'll do is like a while ago when crypto and NFT was hot, I'm like, all right, who's the best in the game? I'm like, I can't afford to spend $5,000 to sit in their office for an hour, but I can invite them on my show for an hour and a half for free and ask them anything I want. And so that's the way I take it. I still listen to my old podcast because I'm still learning. I listen to every one of my old episodes. I'm like, oh, I forgot that. I forgot about this. I forgot about that. So for me, it's always a learning experience because I'm the guy that I'm like a little old man when I go to the boardwalk. I just like to sit and watch people. I'm a people watcher. I love to learn people. So I love talking to people. Like I got 6 interviews that are going to go at least an hour and a half, 2 hours all on Wednesday because I love talking to people.
Yeah, I mean, and you're spending you're at 2 hours with me now, and who knows how
But
much
for,
longer this
but
will
for me,
go. I mean,
it's
I'm
just
getting
like
through,
I
everything I
like
want
to
to talk to
learn.
you about, but
And if
yeah,
you feel comfortable opening up to me, like I had one guy, my friend Paul Akins. I was the first show he ever went on where he talked about being sexually abused by a priest, and now he's helping
right.
others because I was that guy that opened up and listened to him and cared about him. And people, that's why they call me the male Oprah and GI Joe Rogan. People tell me shit that they never planned on telling me, but I don't use it as a hey, I got you. But I just tell, listen, if you're coming, I tell you before you come on my show, if you're coming on the show, there's no editing and I'm not taking it down. So whatever you say,
Hell yeah.
you say.
I lo- It's it gets to live on the internet
Exactly.
forever. Yeah. No, I just did an interview with Rod Blanc, which will release here in a few weeks, and the man walks us through his battle with stage 4 throat cancer and gets deep and emotional. And to my knowledge, that's the first time he's talked about it in that capacity publicly. And the reason I asked you that question is because for me, this is very much therapy. It's very much, talking to other veterans who have walked a similar path, understand where I'm coming from, and then have turned it around and are interested in the same things I am. It's like, oh, yeah, like this is reassurance that I'm walking the right path. This is, I don't care if you're a franchise owner or you own storage facilities or you're another podcaster. Like we all have this entrepreneurial spirit in mind, and we just want to improve people's lives. And when you get into a conversation like this via the internet or with people in a room and you have those conversations, it's like, oh man, I feel so good about myself and like I'm doing the right thing. Would you agree that you kind of get that
Yeah, I
element out of it
do.
as
And
well?
but like when me and John Lee sat down, and because he's my mentor, and I paid him for mentorship, I paid him to coach me. We've spent the first 6 weeks of just trying to figure out who my perfect avatar is. Like for me, like he told me, go an inch wide, but go a mile deep. Like for me, and I got a picture on my phone of some random guy in his family, because my perfect avatar was a 45-year-old male, father of three, veteran, brand new business owner. And I got a picture of some random guy. My wife's like, "Who's this?" I'm like, "It's Craig." I'm like, "I don't know his name. I call him Craig." But whenever I have him on the show, whenever I have anybody on my show, that's who I'm talking to. So I'm talking to Craig. What does Craig need? Because Craig was me not 6 years ago, and Craig is me 6 years from now. And I think once you find who you're talking to, because even Jim Rohn said it, if you're marketing to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. And I think when people start a podcast, they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to go everywhere," and nobody's going to listen because you're not touching anybody. So for me, if you're a business
Yeah,
owner,
you're not Joe Rogan
that's the
yet. You
most
can't do
important thing
that.
is to
Right.
find out who your perfect avatar is.
So you've been a strong advocate for mental health and exploring alternative recovery
Yeah,
therapies, is
and
that right?
every year I have a Today I Decide Mental Health Summit, which is I usually have 10 speakers go on Zoom or through StreamYard, and we have 10 speakers talk about their mental health. And some things I agree with, some things I don't, some things I'm interested in. Like for me, I was watching this show, Change My Mind. It was on Netflix, talking about microdosing with psilocybin and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's great. I'm never going to turn anybody down for, but you're never going to see me saying, "Hey, Rich, look at his new sponsorship. He's getting sponsored by the CBD guys." It's like I can't have it, but it doesn't mean it's not good for you. So I think like I believe that there's post traumatic stress and there's post traumatic growth. And like that conversation with Mr. Ed Milet, I was supposed to fly down on his personal jet to South Carolina and hang out with him for the weekend, the week after I lost my vision. And I called him, and I'm like, and I called his people, and I'm like, I just lost my vision. I'm like, I can't fly because of the pressure and all that. Next day, I get a box of shit. He sent me a whole bunch of swag with max out, all that stuff, and my phone rings, and it's from like Malibu, California. I'm like, I don't know anybody in California. I'm like, hello. He's like, it's Ed. I'm like, Ed who? He's like, Milet. I was like, oh my God. And we were talking for a couple minutes, and he's like, and this is where it really changed my life, because I always played the blame game in my life. Until he said, Rich,
Mhm.
nothing has ever happened to you. Everything has
It
happened
happens
for
for you.
you, and everything is a teachable moment. You don't have PTSD, you have post traumatic growth. And then it was just like, and I just changed the tape of everything that's ever happened to me. I just changed the tape. Like, yeah, I was abused, but maybe because it happened to me so I can help somebody else. So that's when I don't, I use post traumatic growth a lot more than I'll ever talk about post traumatic stress.
That's a great way to look at it, and I need to adopt that philosophy. So share with us, what are you currently working on that excites you the most, and any projects or initiatives that you should look out for? The new book just dropped. I'm a proud owner of that book. Hopefully, my review went through for you on my Kindle. I don't know if it
Yeah.
did because Kindle's slow, but the podcasting blueprint, mastering your
And what this
purpose.
is, this book,
Yeah,
guys, and it's all because of my Lord and Savior, but it's also because of all my mentors. And I mentioned all my mentors in here. So, because obviously in life, most of us don't create anything. We're just break taking what other people taught us and break it down Barney style. So that's what I did is I took everything I've learned and put it into one 47-page book. And the thing is, it's easy. It's clickable. It's clickable. If you get the ebook, you can. Somebody said, my friend said, you can buy the book at breakfast and have a podcast by dinner.
it's the truth. I read it in one night after we talked. I let you know the next morning. We talked about it, and it is. It's your idea behind creating the book, and buying it at breakfast. You'll have it done in less
Yeah.
than an hour, I would think, if you're any kind of reader. By dinner, you really can have a podcast and understand some things that I didn't understand when I started my first podcast. Things that I've already implemented for this podcast that make a whole lot of sense. And it was a really great read. And I think anybody who's interested in starting a
But and the reason why, because I have the hardcover, I have the ebook, but I figured I've read a lot of books out there, podcasting courses. But whoever made a course where you want to join Lisbon, click here. You want to get affiliates, click here. So it's pretty much a podcast in a box. And that's why I made it that way.
That's a
There's no
great idea.
fluff. There is zero fluff in it. It's all 100% doable, actionable steps. That's why it's not 100 pages. I could have made 100 pages, but I'm like, I don't want fluff. I want something you could take, use it, and start seeing progress, start stacking wins. Like James Clear wrote in the book Atomic Habits. Start winning early, start stacking your wins. So if you get the book and you start clicking, you're going to start stacking wins in the first day.
And I love your approach to that because often, I'm a big reader too, not nearly as much as you. I read at night before bed and then I listen to audiobooks while I exercise. It's just my process. But there there's so much information in these books that it almost gives you that analysis paralysis, right? And so I like what you did with your book. Like, fuck all that. I just need to give them enough to get them to take an action, because as soon as you take an action and you start stacking wins, you don't want to stop, right? Like, you just want to keep going. And so I really like your approach to creating that book, because it is important to eliminate the barriers to entry with analysis paralysis. And the biggest problem I see is people just won't, they're
But then
afraid to take action.
but then like something you asked me a couple of questions. We were going back and forth on LinkedIn. But then there's also people that are like, okay, I got the book. I need help. Well, you can also hire me and we can work together for 8 weeks and we can take your podcast from thought to profit in 8 weeks. So, because sometimes everybody has a different learning modality. And that's why I did it that way. You want personal coaching? I can coach you. You want the ebook? Get the ebook. If you like the hard copy, get the hard copy. And I just learned that people have different learning modalities.
And you're giving away your secrets right now because essentially the book is a lead magnet to your
Well,
coaching
it is,
business, right?
and like I got two clients right now, and guys, I am not cheap. I am not. I'm probably one of the most expensive coaches you're going to have, but also you're going to get results. So, but because a lot of people they start a business and something I'm trying to remember who said. I think it was it was Alex and Layla Hormozy. They were talking about you need to at least have 3 different offers. He says because there's sometimes there's a people that just want the ebook, and then there's people that are going to want the hardcover, but there's like 7% of the people. If you just say, listen, this is the top brand, this is the top, they're going to be like, well, I only want the best. And sometimes when somebody, those 7%, when they do buy, they're going to pay for the other 93%. So that's where I got that. And like I said, I just learned from Alex. I learned that from Alex and Layla and their books, the $100 million. They were game changers. So like I said, I'm not learning. I'm not saying anything new. I'm just taking it from what I was taught and breaking it down my way.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I have $100 million offers and leads sitting right next to me, and the other 3 books that I think are musts if you want to get into business are Russell
Trilogy,
Brunson's
baby,
books,
the trilogy.
Secrets books.
Yeah.
Yep. And those 5 books sit next to me. They're readily available for me to access whenever I need to go back. I think I've read the Secrets.
And one
book.
thing, I love all 3, and I've talked to Russell a few times. But one thing, and I say, Russell, I only learned one thing from your book. He's like, come on, bro. I'm like, the only thing I really learned from your books, and I break his chops, obviously, but people that pay attention. And a lot of people, the hey bros, or they want free shit, they're not going to act upon it. If you get everything, like if you give me a gym membership for free, I ain't going. But if I'm paying $100 a month and my wife is looking at the bill at the first of the month, she'd be like, "Listen, fat ass." She'd be like,
You
"Fat
bet your
ass, you
ass
need to
you're
get to
going.
the gym or you got to cancel." So people,
Right.
and that's what I learned out of those
Right.
books, and obviously a lot more. But people that pay attention, and also like Alex and Layla talk about is the, you can never compete. Don't ever compete on price. There makes zero sense to being the lowest price person in the world, but there makes tremendous sense for being the highest price person in your niche. Like I was with GNC for 30 years, over 30. And if I had a sale and there was $800 pre-workouts, $50 pre-workouts, and $120 pre-workouts, guess which ones are going to get sold first? Every time. Because somebody's like, there's got to be a reason why this is that expensive. So make sure. So guys, just make sure if you start a business, make sure you have 3 different offers and make one stupid offer because there's going to be people out there that want the best.
And typically your stupid offer is the one that's going to require you to do the least amount of work. It is good, reflecting on your journey, what are the key lessons you've learned about resilience and making a comeback that stick with you to this day that you want to pass on to the audience?
Today I decide. Today I decide is the 3 most important words in the English language. And the reason why, whenever I end my show, I'm a big Joel Osteen guy. By the way, guys, I got new swag coming that says I'm a winner. And on the back it says I won. But he says that you have a choice when you wake up in the morning, when you go to bed. You can either be a victim or you can be a victor. Today I decide, am I going to be the victor or am I going to be the victim? So that's why I talk to anybody. That's why I wear this out. And my other shirt I always have, it says, "Are you ready for a comeback?" Um, it's all about the decisions we make. Like I know that if I'm going to be successful 5 years from now, it's what I'm doing right now and 5 minutes from now that's going to lead me to success 5 years from now. So it's today I decide what I do. And even like James Clear wrote in Atomic Habits, oh, by the way, he's got a brand new app out. Check out James Clear. Um, he talks about how 60% of everything we do is habits. So if you change one habit a
I
year,
love that book.
you're a new person in 365 days. So
Yeah, I love that book so much. I'm glad you keep. Yeah, today I decide that couldn't be a better answer to that question. Two more questions for you, and that's all I've got for you. But what advice would you give to veterans who are lost, looking for that path back to purpose, who are considering entrepreneurship? What advice would you have for
I
them?
always say, now Dean Graziosi, he actually did a great piece on me and thanking me and everything. But I would probably say, even if you just pick up that book that talks about the seven whys, and if you just do that one exercise, then you'll be able to figure out why you're here. Because the greatest days are the days that you're born, and then the day that you figure out why you're born. So if you can figure out your why,
Mhm.
then you have life beat. Because a lot of us, when we get out of the military, we're like, well, now what? What's my mission? Well, I want to have a nice house. Well, why? For my family. Why? And then when you get down to the sixth, seventh level, you're like, it's not what I thought it was. So that's what I would say. I say pick up. I don't get anything because I don't care where you get the book, but even if you just Google Dean Graziosi and the Seven Whys and do that thing, I think once you figure out your why, because my old podcast was called Success, your why powers your how. So once you figure out your wow, I mean your why, the how's going to come.
Oh, that's so great. Last question, man. Tell everybody where they can find you, how often you release new episodes of your podcast, what platforms you're on. I want to make sure that we get you in front of my entire audience, even though it is small, and they'll let the
Well, and
world
I
know
just want
about
to
you,
say,
man.
and I was talking about this with somebody the other day. I can't help. My goal this year is to help 3 million people. I can't help the 3 million if I don't help the one. So I don't
Right.
care who's listening. I want the one person that's struggling today to listen to this. You're the one that matters. And if you want to find me, I don't have a virtual assistant, guys. It's always me. If you just Google vertical momentum, I think we're on the first 8 pages of Google. If you message me, we're on 35 platforms. So if you message me on any of them, it's always me, and you're never going to get a somebody that's not real, and you're also not going to get. I'm not going to try to sell you anything because if we don't jam,
Fact.
if we
I
don't
can
gel,
confirm that.
we're friends. You know, but I want to offer something to your readers too, to your listeners. If somebody's interested in my first book, A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light, and they send you their email address, I'll send them the book for free. They get the book for free, no costs.
Oh
And
man.
if anybody's is struggling in business, um, if you reach out to my brother, let me know, and we'll set up an hour on the phone or through Zoom or whatever which way. You get an hour of my time, nothing attached. Not selling anything. I'm just trying to help move forward. And any friend of his is a friend of mine. So if you want an hour of my time, it's yours.
Brother, that means the world to me, man. I'm super grateful for that. And I really appreciate all of your time today. I appreciate the candidness in this conversation. And, my audience, I hope they really appreciate what you just offered them because, this man has a lot of value to provide. And, he's as real as he appears here. I can confirm that with, he was bumping Eminem, banging his head when I came into the first call with him. And that set the tone for everything. This man has been in my DMs, back and forth with me since we set this up, giving me advice, checking to make sure I got my ducks in a row. Like he genuinely cares. He's here to help everybody. And I think we need to help him as much as possible reach his goal of 3 million.
And legacy before currency.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you Richard Kaufman. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, brother. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful you volunteered your time to be here today. I really appreciate
I
you.
love it, brother, and I can't wait to have you come on the show because um, I can't wait just to pick your brain and learn from you because I can learn from anybody, whether it's a 6-year-old, sick or a 90-year-old. I learn from everybody and I take from everybody and put it into my ecosystem. So I can't wait for you to come on the show.
Oh, I'm super excited to be on your show, man. I've been listening to your episodes when I walk in the morning, and you've given me a lot to think about. You're definitely an inspiration to me, and there's some things that I'm trying to take away from you and the way you conduct your show. I don't know if you noticed those in this show or not, but you are an inspiration, man, and I'm so grateful to have met you, and so grateful for your kindness and your generosity and coming
Oh, and
on my show and
something you asked earlier,
just
the
believing in my
episodes come
mission.
out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So
Tuesdays and Thursdays. There you go, folks. I was wondering how he's going to cram 300 into a year, but ladies and gentlemen, Richard Kaufman, I appreciate you, brother. And until next time, man.